Hi, this is Bastiaan, and today we're going to look at the Aasum gambit, which is a variation of the Dunst opening, as well as the minority attack, which will happen at the end of the game. So first, the minority attack is a situation where white has fewer pawns, let's say a pawn island of 2 pawns, versus 3 pawns for black, and where paradoxically white advances his pawns with the idea to create weaknesses in black's position. And this can either be creating a position for a knight outpost, or double black's pawns, or create a passed pawn, or have black remain with one single pawn after all pawns are exchanged, which will be difficult to protect. Or it can simply be to open lines so white can continue his attack, and this is what we're going to see at the end of the game, where I'm going to use a minority attack to open up lines and create weaknesses and eventually win the game. Now, a minority attack happens most frequently with the Queen's Gambit or the Grunfeld type of play, but here we're going to see it on the King side with the Aasum Gambit. Now, the Aasum Gambit is sometimes called the Hector-Gambit, named after Swedish Grandmaster Johnny Hector, which is also a correspondence Grandmaster, and he's also known for playing irregular openings. So I like him already. So let's go to the game. Knight to c3, which is the Dunst or Van Giet opening. Black plays d5. Now, with knight to c3, black has the possibility to either play d5 or e5, because although the knight covers the d5 square, it's still protected by the queen. And I play e4, which is a way to continue the Dunst opening, adding a second attacker on the pawn. Black captures the pawn, and now I could recapture with knight takes a pawn on e4. However, I'm playing the Aasum Gambit, bishop to c4, developing pieces at the cost of a pawn, but we can see that this pawn is overextended and in need of protection. So black develops his knight to f6, a natural developing move, hoping to hold on to the pawn on e4. And now we can see white is having some issues. If he wants to keep developing pieces, we can see that knight to f3 is no longer possible because that square is covered by the pawn. Developing the bishop is impossible because it's blocked by the pawn. Moving the pawn is impossible because then black can either take the pawn immediately or en passant, and white will keep losing pawns if he wants to keep on developing. I could try to develop the knight to e2, and later on to g3, which will develop the knight and also create 2 attackers on the pawn on e4. It's a possible continuation, but it is slow. So, what else can I try? I can add another attacker on the pawn by moving the queen, but queen to g4 isn't possible because of the knight. Also, queen to e2 doesn't seem to work because black can now play bishop to g4, getting in some free development. It's still playable after the wasteful move queen to e3. Now white can attack the pawn, But after knight to c6 and knight takes pawn, black can either play knight to d5, attacking the queen, or even knight to d4, looking to attack the pawn on c2 with a triple fork. So white is compromising a lot if he wants to attack the pawn with the queen. There are two more attackers I can try. It's either d3 or f3. And I think f3 is the most common continuation in these situations. However, I play d3, offering up another pawn. Now, if black captures the pawn, say pawn takes pawn, we can see that there's no longer coverage on f3, and I can continue development with knight to f3. And of course, black cannot continue to capture pawns, because if pawn takes pawn, there's a small trap here. I can play bishop takes pawn on f7 check, forcing king takes bishop. Now we'll gain a queen on d8. So that might work against weaker opponents. However, black doesn't capture the pawn and plays bishop to g4 instead, attacking the queen, forcing f3 anyways. Now black has the choice to capture either pawn, and of course he prefers to capture the f3 pawn, which will lead to an attack on g2 and later on the rook, with a discovered attack on the queen. So it looks like black has found a strong continuation. I need to recapture the pawn, so knight takes pawn, and I end up with a knight being pinned. Black continues development with knight to c6, looking for a jump to d4. So I need to cover the d4 square. Bishop to e3. e6, looking to develop the second knight, and then castle. Second bishop, of course, and then castle. h3, trying to kick the bishop. Black doesn't retreat but exchanges. Bishop to d6. So black is ready to castle. And now I have the possibility to castle either kingside or queenside. Queenside looks safer, so I castle queenside. Black plays queen to d7, also gaining the possibility to either castle kingside or queenside. So it's not yet clear how the game will continue. Rook to f1, rook to the half open file. And now it's black's turn to castle. Let's see if black castles queenside. I can continue with bishop to b5. Bishop to b5 pins the knight with the discovered attack on the queen. And I'm now threatening bishop takes pawn on a7. So if a6 is played to save the pawn, I can take the knight, queen can recapture, queen takes queen, and pawn recaptures. And now we can see black's king isn't safe, and he has doubled an isolated pawns and another isolated pawn on a6. And this doesn't look too safe at all for black. So castling queenside, although playable, may lead to complications for black. And black castles kingside. I play d4, looking to play d5 eventually. Notice how many pieces are covering the d5 square. Knight to a5, attacking the bishop. Bishop retreats. I retreat to e2 to keep protecting the pawn with the rook. And black plays bishop to e7. Now, I'm having a battery which may come crushing through, especially perhaps if I add more pressure with the bishop. So black anticipates this and protects his knight by playing bishop to e7. This makes the idea of bishop to g5 less interesting. So I decided upon another strategy. I'm going to play a minority attack, where I will use these two pawns to create weaknesses against the static pawns on the 7th rank that are now protecting the king. So g4, looking to play g5 and then h4. Black plays h6, covering g5. I play h4, covering g5. Analysis has shown that this move wasn't necessary because the bishop is already covering g5, but it's not bad to play it. Black plays queen to c6, hoping to destroy the battery and trade off queens. Also, with major pieces of the board, weaknesses on, say, h7 become less important. Of course, I do not want to trade off queens, and I play d5, playing the pawn on the protected square. There are currently still 3 pieces protecting it. So the queen is under attack. Queen moves to d6, g5. Black recaptures and pawn recaptures. So now it's 1 pawn against 2, but I have succeeded in my goal, that is creating weaknesses. I have an open h-file. The knight is under attack, so knight goes to h7. And let's see if I have enough compensation after the minority attack. Now the weakness on h7 looks to be compensated by the knight that has taken the place, and there looks to be 2 attackers on the pawn on g5. So I play rook to h1, and now of course the pawn cannot be recaptured by the knight, because if the knight recaptures, the h-file is open again, and I can play queen to h5, and I'm looking to play queen to h8 mate, and this no longer can be stopped by retreating the knight. So if, say, f6 is played to create an escape for the king, also to protect the knight against the double attack, white can continue with queen h8 check, king to f7, then bishop h5 check, pawn to g6 is forced, bishop takes pawn check, king recaptures, queen h5 check. There are 2 continuations, both will lead to a forced mate. Let's say king g7, bishop takes knight, pawn recaptures, queen h7 check, king f6, rook h6 check, king to e5, and finally queen e4 mate. So we can see that it's easy to exploit the hole that's been made on h7. by the minority attack. So moving the knight off of h7 will lead to a mate. Black takes on the final pawn with bishop takes pawn, hoping to gain a free pawn and destroy the final pawn of the minority attack. But now white can continue attacking with knight to e4, first attacking the queen. So queen moves to e5, also protecting the bishop, which now is under a double attack. And although I could recapture the bishop, even stronger is rook takes knight, an exchange sacrifice. King recaptures rook, knight to g5 check, king retreats, and queen to h5. So I'm looking for queen to h7, which is made. But in doing so, there's no longer protection on the bishop on e3. So I'm sacrificing the bishop as well. Queen takes bishop, check. Black is gaining tempo. King to b1. And after king to b1, we can see that the three squares Black can move his queen to in order to cover h7 are no longer available, because the knight is covering e4, pawn and bishop and rook are covering d3, and queen and rook are covering h3. So there's no way for Black's queen to move in order to protect h7, and I'm looking for a queen to h7 mate. So Black captures the knight in order to prevent the mate. Queen recaptures, pawn takes pawn, rook to g1, creating a battery, g6, queen h6, rook f to e8, attacking the bishop and in some cases providing escape. But after rook to h1, rook takes bishop, queen h8, Black is mated. So that was an example of play with the Aasum gambit, ending up with a minority attack. So I hope you enjoyed watching this game. Please leave a comment and have a great evening.